Well, good morning, church.
Good morning.
Listen, we've got a college Bible study that I teach on Tuesday evenings, and we meet out at this cabin. We don't meet here on the campus, we meet out at a cabin. And at this cabin, there's something unique that's going on. I don't know if it's a seasonal thing, I don't know if it's always been there and I've just never noticed, but around the doors on three sides of this cabin, there are these massive spiders. Huge spiders that sit in these webs that look like if you get too close, it's going to grab you and carry you away to its leader, okay? Now, I looked it up. I used AI to take a picture of it and figure out what kind of monstrosity this is. And it turns out, unfortunately, they're native to this area, which means our days are numbered. They're going to take over. It's called a garden spider. Any of you guys heard of or seen a garden spider before? They're yellow and frightening looking, and they've got those scary black legs, and they're this big. Now, mind you, I'm a small human being. I'm 5'7", so I fit right within its target level of prey. And as frightening as these suckers look, I realized something. I realized this in preparation for the sermon. We tend to fear the big, scary things, right? How many of you guys, if you came face to face with a tarantula, that would be it. You'd give up the ghost and you'd go to meet your heavenly Savior Jesus, and he would keep you safe from the spider, right? Tarantula fearers? Some of you are crazy. Okay, cool. You just don't want to admit your fear of tarantulas. We tend to fear things that are really, really big. That's kind of human nature. But when you think about spiders, are the bigger spiders the more deadly ones? No. It's them small little critters that will climb into your shoes or wait until you're asleep at night and then climb into your nose and bite you from the brain. You laugh, it happens. So I got to thinking about this fear of spiders I have and about how the smaller ones are more dangerous than the bigger ones, and I started to realize this is actually a pattern when you look at the entire animal kingdom. Last week at the beginning of the sermon, I gave you guys a quiz. Y'all did so well with the quiz. I wanted to give you just one more, and it's just 2 questions. I really feel like, okay, it's 3 questions, and I really feel like y'all will do really well with it. I believe in y'all. Okay. I want you to tell me, and I want you to raise your hands, right? And if you're wrong, everyone's going to stare at you, but it's fine. What do you think the world's most deadly animal is? The one responsible for the #1 amount of human deaths in the world. I'm going to give you multiple choice. Option A, the king cobra, which is the longest venomous snake in the entire world. The king cobra, right? Do you think that one? That's option A. Option B, the polar bear, which is the largest carnivore that roams planet Earth, okay? Or option C, them pesky little mosquitoes. Which one do you think it is? Hands for option A? Okay, hands for option B? Hands for option C? It's the mosquitoes. Good job. God's watching, you get extra points. It's the mosquitoes because of the blood and they transfer diseases. They're responsible for more human deaths than all the other 2 put together. Let's try another option. This one's a little bit harder, actually. Which of these 3 animals is responsible for more deaths of humans on an average yearly basis? You got option A, elephants, which are the size of houses. You got option B, hippopotamuses, hippopotamus, hippos. Hippos, which are remarkably aggressive towards human beings. Option C, dogs. Okay, I said raise your hands, you sinners. Now you've given away the answer. Although y'all are correct. It is dogs. They are more responsible for deaths than elephants and hippos combined. Okay, now here's the really hard one. Are y'all ready for it? And it's going to be the trickiest one. Y'all need to think about it. Which dog breed is responsible for the most human deaths? Which dog breed is the most aggressive, the most ferocious? Option A, we got Dobermans. Option B, we got Rottweilers. Option C, we've got Pit Bulls. Dobermans? Really? Okay. Rottweilers? Really? Okay. Pit Bulls? Okay, you want to know the answer? You're all wrong. Gavin, put up the real answer. It's Chihuahuas. Science says it is Chihuahuas. And I know that some of you out here today have Chihuahuas, and you're like, no, not mine. He's a sweetheart. And I have crafted a very, very good comeback to you who say that. No, he's not. Chihuahuas are 50% shake and 50% hate. That is their actual chemical makeup. And mind you, the Chihuahuas are the smallest of dog breeds, and yet they still have that prehistoric canine instinct to hunt and to kill. We tend to fear the bigger things. You see something like a Rottweiler or a German Shepherd and you're like, oh no, but really it's the smaller things. It's the Chihuahua that's gonna get you. As a friendly reminder, we are in, okay, you can get rid of that picture, Gavin, you can get rid of that. We are in a sermon series called All In. We're working through the book of James, and we're talking about what it means to live into our Christian faith with every aspect of our lives, and not just to be Christians on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights. We've talked about, I'll give you that recap in a second. But so here, James, we're in James chapter 3. This is actually the second to last sermon in this sermon series. And here we read about James talking about the tongue. Now, I do want to give you just a little bit of backstory, a little bit of context in case you weren't here for the last couple of Sundays. James is a remarkably practical letter. It's a remarkably practical book, and it's written not just to one particular church or to one particular subset of Christians, but it's a letter that's actually intended for all Christians all around the known world. And James begins by talking about not only being hearers of the word, not only people who receive what the Bible says, who receive Jesus' teachings, but about people who are doers of the word. How Christianity is one in which we put into practice the things that we learn, the things that we receive, the things that we know to be true. And then he continues in chapter 2 to say your faith is not one to be of mere head knowledge, not to be one of mere cognitive, intellectual belief, but how your faith should naturally spur you and lead you towards action. Now, with that, he follows up in chapter 3 with the very first couple of verses specifically talking about teachers. Now, if he's talked about being a doer of the word and not just a hearer, if he's talked about letting your faith spur you to action and not just words, it naturally follows that he would address the teachers, those who are the leaders in their churches, those who are the Bible study teachers, the Sunday school teachers, and he would tell them, not everyone needs to be a teacher. Because those who are called to teach are going to be judged more strictly. Why will they be judged more strictly? Why will they be held to a higher standard of accountability? Specifically because their words have power. You think about a teacher. When someone sits at the feet of a teacher, whenever someone walks into a teacher's classroom, they expect to be able to receive proper instruction. And if that teacher gives them wrong information, if that teacher pronounces falsehoods, if that teacher gives them something that's going to lead them down the wrong path, it's going to do damage in that person's spiritual life. Is that person's fault? No. They went to that teacher in goodwill, hoping to receive proper guidance, proper information and instruction. So the teachers are held to a higher standard, but not only because of that, because their lives and their words also have to match. If you have a teacher who is saying all of these good things, talking about all the wonderful ways in which we're called to follow Jesus, all the things that are expected of us, but you look at their life and see that none of it matches up, it causes people to not believe that teacher and to fall away from the faith. So teachers, by virtue of their words, by virtue of what they say and their instruction, are held to a higher level of accountability because of their ability to lead people away from the faith and cause others to stumble. But James only devotes like 1 or 2 verses to teachers. When I read this, I think about what it must have been like for him to sit down and write this letter. He's talking about connecting words and deeds. He's talking about connecting hearing and doing. He talks about teachers and the necessity of them to actually, 1, know the proper thing to teach, and 2, to live into it. And I imagine that like after verse 2, James pauses for a second and says, wait a minute. This applies to more than just teachers. This applies to every single believer all around the world. So James begins to talk about how small things in our world can have a remarkably large impact. He talks about the bit that goes in the mouth of a horse, and how a horse, though it's this massive creature, can be steered and controlled by just this small piece that's in its mouth. He talks about the rudder of a ship, just this small piece, well, it depends on the ship, but just this proportionally small piece that actually directs the actual direction of the ship and where it goes. Some ships which could be multiple tons. And then he talks about the tongue and the great power it has, not just for teachers, but for every single person. How though it is small, relatively, the tongue is not one of the bigger parts of the body, how it's small and yet it has so much power inherent in it. Let me give you a demonstration. Any of you guys ever say something that as soon as the words left your mouth, you wished you could just grab them in midair and stop them from reaching other people's ears? Put another way, any of you, whenever your parents said, hey, can you take out the trash? And then you said, why don't you do it? Oh, your whole body tenses up. You realize what you've done, and then you try. No, Lord, don't let them hear it, but it's too late. Their eyes have been set on fire. Their face melts, and then you're in trouble, right? Words have the ability to do an incredible amount of damage to relationships. Mere words can, in an instant, completely change the course of our lives. Have you ever seen someone on national television say something that completely ruined their career? Have you ever seen someone, maybe one of your own people that you know, put something on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, that based on what they said, completely changed their relationships in their life for the worse because of what they said? Absolutely. Words and the tongue have an incredible amount of power. And James specifies that that power can actually set our entire lives on fire. Some of you guys, back in the day, now I don't know if it's still taught, but back in the day, I remember my family teaching me, if you don't have anything nice to say, finish it. Don't say anything at all. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. I actually may have learned that from the Disney movie Bambi. I'm not sure. But I remember learning it. But there's an issue with that statement. It's not actually fully correct. It doesn't actually fully solve the problem. Now, it might keep you from getting assaulted by somebody based on what you say, but it doesn't actually deal with the problem. Do you know what the number one problem with the tongue is? The real power that the tongue has? The tongue gives a window into the heart. It gives a window into the soul. It allows someone to be able to see into the very real, active, spiritual state of somebody. That's where the real power of the tongue sits. Let me give you just a couple of examples. I want you to imagine someone who gets really angry at something for a second. Maybe they're inconvenienced in some way. Maybe they're at, Dairy Queen and the cashier gets their order wrong. Maybe they're sitting in traffic. They're late for work and they're catching every single red light. Or they're going down the road and everyone in front of them is going 12 miles under the speed limit, as is typical in Texarkana. Suppose that person is encountering whatever, and they begin to get upset, and then cuss words begin to fly out of their mouth left and right, and this person's a moron, and this person's stupid, and why doesn't this person think, and bleep and blank. I want you to imagine that person. What do those words tell you about the state of that person's heart? What do they reveal about the state of their soul and their spiritual condition? Their cursing, they're getting that angry, reveals that that person's heart is filled with pride. Because they're inconvenienced, because they're not getting their way, it causes this remarkable negative reaction. And you know what that shows? They're not giving anything over to God. That person has an inability to trust that God is sovereign, to trust that God is completely in control, and to trust that things ultimately need to work according to God's ways and not their own. That person is not concerned with anyone else and what they have going on in their lives. They're only concerned with their own world and how what they want is being disrupted. You see how cussing gives a window into the state of that person's soul? That's fun. Let's do another one. Gossiping. Gossiping. That's some people's favorite pastime. When someone gossips, typically they're going around talking about someone else's faults, someone else's failures, talking something negative about somebody. You don't really hear about gossiping as being someone going around spreading good, positive vibes about someone else. It's usually something that's a secret, usually something that someone wouldn't want getting out. You take someone who's gossiping. How do those words give a window into someone's soul? When they walk up to you and they're like, oh, did you hear that Geraldine got fat over COVID? Oh, she put on so many pounds. Oh, did you hear that Greg got sunburnt? I can't say anything too negative. I don't want you to think it's real. But whatever it may be, right? What do those words tell you about the state of that person's soul? It tells you that that is someone who has not learned contentment with what God has given them. It tells you that that is someone whose heart feels empty, who feels no joy in their everyday life, and therefore wants to bring others down to their level. Let's do one more. We talked about cussing. We talked about gossiping. Let's talk about boasting. Let's talk about lying, right? What about those people who every single time you see them, we all love these people, can't help but tell you about all the wonderful accomplishments that they've made. Let me tell you all the great things about myself. I got to be careful. I might be describing myself here. But when you see that person and they're just going on and on and on and on and on about what they've done and how good they are and how great they are, and sometimes when we talk to these people, we know this is a lie. You're a liar. You're making this up. You're exaggerating this. What do those words tell us about the state of someone's spiritual life, about the posture of their heart? We see that that is a person who feels insecure. We see that that is a person who does not know and does not hold the love of Jesus in their heart because they don't feel loved, which is why they have to try to say all of these things to make themselves feel like they're going to be able to earn someone's affection, right? If they can just feel like they're good enough, if they can just impress you enough, maybe they'll feel worthy. Maybe they'll finally feel loved. This is someone who does not feel the love of Jesus in their heart, and so they try to go around impressing everyone that they can. Fill in the blank with any example you want. The words that someone speaks give a window into their heart and into their spiritual condition. And Jesus himself actually says this. If you flip over to Matthew chapter 15, you can read his exact words in verses 17 through 20. The Pharisees had approached Jesus about his disciples not washing their hands before they eat. So Jesus counters with what truly defiles and makes someone unclean. Gavin, the words are going to be up on the screen. Starting in verse 17, Jesus says, "Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what defile a person, but eating with unwashed hands, that's not what defiles them." So here, you have Jesus himself saying the bad things that come out of someone's mouth come from the heart. Now, how many of you, whenever you read James chapter 3 and James says, you got to be careful about what you say, one little word, one misstatement can set the whole life on fire, can do great damage, can ruin relationships, can make people misunderstand you. You got to be careful what you say. How many people, whenever they read that passage, think, oh, I got to watch my mouth. Oh, I got to hold my tongue. Oh, I got to be careful of what I say. You know what James says in this passage that we read? Chris read it. I don't know if you caught it. James wrote, nobody can tame the tongue. Nobody can tame the tongue. Try as hard as you might. Whenever you're sitting next to someone who you cannot stand, you might try to think, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But guess what's going to come out somehow, some way, in some form or fashion? Yep, you giggle because you know it's true. No matter how hard you try, you cannot tame the tongue. Do you know why? Because the tongue is not meant to be tamed. Nowhere in the Bible does it say, now, you've got to get your tongue completely in control so that it doesn't communicate the actual thoughts that you're thinking in your brain. No. The tongue is a vehicle for what's on the inside. It just brings it to light. trying to tame the tongue and trying to stop the tongue, or trying to believe that your mouth and the speech that you pour forth is the actual problem, is like getting a drink. How many of you have heard of a matcha before? It's what the young kids are drinking these days. Matchas, you've heard of matchas? No one's heard of matchas. Well, let me tell you what a matcha is. If you go to like 7 Brew, you can order one if you're brave. It is this, they go outside and they get grass. And then they put it in a blender. And then they give it to you and charge you $13 for it. That's what kids mean when they say, I'm going to get a matcha. If ever you look at someone who's got like a 7 Brew cup and it looks like an elephant sneezed into that cup, that is a matcha. Now, I've never had one, but I believe that it's disgusting because it looks that way. Or fill in the blank with any disgusting drink that you can potentially order, right? If you were to get a disgusting drink, how ridiculous would it be to taste it and say, oh, that's awful. Something's wrong with this straw. How dumb. Do any of you do that? No. You blame what's in the cup. The straw is just what's transferring what's in the cup to your mouth. Likewise, your mouth, your tongue, is just what's transferring what's in your heart and what's in your soul outward into the world. Your mouth is not the issue. Your heart is the issue. If you're going around saying things that are leading people away from Jesus, that are causing people to doubt whether or not you are actually a Christian, if you're going around saying things that are harmful to other people's spiritual journey or their lives, guess what? Mouth is not the issue. The heart's the issue. Now, here's the hard part, friends. You can't fix your heart. There is only one way for your heart to be renewed, for your heart to be cleansed, for your heart to be set on good things so that whatever comes out of your mouth is spiritually edifying, and that is to take it to Jesus. But the problem is that so many Christians are so focused on all the big sins. As long as I don't sleep around, as long as I don't steal, as long as I don't kill that person who is getting on my last nerve, I'm doing good. But what happens is that they neglect the signs of a deteriorating spiritual life. They neglect the signs of a heart that is in need of renewal. Any of you guys go to the dentist? Any of you guys have a dentist? A couple of you? The rest of you don't? Okay. We have a dentist who goes to this church. His name's Torin. Several weeks ago, I was talking to Torin, and I was like, man, I haven't been going to the dentist since I moved back to Texarkana. Don't judge me. But I haven't been going to the dentist. I like to support church members. Y'all support me. Y'all come here. Y'all support what I do. I like to support y'all in your businesses and then what you do. So I told Torin, I said, man, would you be my dentist? He said, Greg, absolutely. And I said, great. I'm never going to come see you. But I like to tell people that you're my dentist. Think about when you get a cavity. When you first get a cavity, at first it may not bother you all that much. You may see it first, and you may think, crap, a cavity. I don't want to go to the dentist. Going to the dentist is not fun, and then they're going to floss shame me, and it's just not good. So what do? You ignore it. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'll just brush extra hard. I'll just try to brush my teeth extra hard. But what happens to that cavity? Does it go away? No. Eventually, that cavity gets bigger, and eventually that cavity begins to cause you a little bit of discomfort, until eventually you become so uncomfortable, even though you may try to numb the pain with ibuprofen every time you feel it, eventually you become so discomfortable, that tooth becomes so decayed that you have no choice but to go to the dentist. Friends, that's what our hearts are like. When there's improper speech, unwholesome talk that comes out of our lips, our response should not be, got to be more careful about what I let slip out there. Our response should be, oh, dang, something is not right in my heart. I need to go see the heavenly dentist. I need to go to God and say, Lord, it is not comfortable for me to yield my heart to you and ask you to change something, but I know that if I don't have this looked at right now, if I let this fester, if I let it build up, I know, God, that it is going to lead to deeper issues down the road in my life and for others. So, Lord, I'm going to come see you now. I'm going to come see you so that you can fill that gap, so that you can stop that decay, so that you can make me whole and clean again. So friends, whenever people hear you, whenever you hear you, what's your response? Is it to blame other people? Well, this person angered me. It's their fault. Is it to blame situations? Well, I couldn't help it. How else would someone react in this particular situation? Or is it to recognize that there is something on the inside that needs work and that needs to be lifted up to God? Because I can guarantee you, friends, if you're only trying to watch your mouth, your heart is only going to continue to decay. But if you are diligent on a daily basis to lift yourself to God and say, Lord, cleanse me, wash me, renew me, and fix me, then you'll see what comes out of your lips. Then you'll see love pour forth. Then you'll see blessing of God. Then you'll see encouraging others. And then you'll see what it means to live into our calling and our faith, not just a few times a week, but each and every single day. And that, friends, is the good news of what God can do whenever we yield ourselves to Him. I hope you're willing to do so. Visiting the dentist is not fun. Letting God examine your heart's not fun, but it's the only thing that's going to make you well. Amen and amen.